Hi, welcome back to the DD Geopolitics live stream. I hope you all enjoyed your holidays and our just about a month-long hiatus, coming back with an enormous guest, the one, the only man that needs no introduction, Andrei Martyanov. How are you? And welcome back.
Well, I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
How was your holiday period?
Not enjoyable because I was cooking. Women in my family just coerced me into the kitchen, and that's what I was doing. I'm good cook, actually.
Are you?
Yep.
What did you make? What is your least favorite thing to make? I know my least favorite thing is pelmeni. I do not like making dumplings.
It's not least favorite. It's delicious. Beef bourguignon. Yeah, because it takes quite a lot of time to cook. Other than that, most of it is okay. So.
Well, let's get started. Over the holiday period, while you were busy making dumplings, Russia was busy decimating Ukraine again. So I think we have a montage of that.
I don't hear you.
We have to talk about that massive strike package. So the thing that was what happened during it was the counterattacks by Ukraine, and people kind of got mixed up thinking that these Russian strikes were retaliation. So I kind of wanted you to take our listeners through kind of how long it takes to plan out a strike package that size. Were you monitoring these strikes? What were your thoughts while seeing it? I know it was a sustained salvo over almost a week long with, I think, like multiple drone swarms and all kinds of things happening. So what really goes into planning a strike package of that magnitude?
First, intel. Obviously, you have to have the reliable targeting. Russians do not attack civilian targets. So in order to plan for that, you have to have an incredible amount of the intelligence. It's both signal intelligence, human intelligence. So Russia was employing all of its ISR complex, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And once most of the targets are confirmed, and you begin to design the package structure of the salvo. So it takes some time. I don't know how long it did take, but it wasn't some kind of immediate response for allegedly, whatever they attacked in Belgorod, which was attack on civilians. They continue to attack civilians. That's the only way they can do it. So, and probably a couple of weeks, I would say, do not forget, they move some of those production, such as, for example, drone assembly, not lines, they are shops basically, constantly because they are afraid. And of course, you have also the issue of the foreign mercenaries, they are staffs of the armed forces of Ukraine and NATO officers who help them to plan yet another disaster. So, I mean, it takes time. I would say at least couple 3 weeks, So, and once it's confirmed, you begin to do what you begin to do.
Well, then in an article, right, around the same, I think it was on 1st of January, they cited Putin, who had already stated, we're going to intensify the strikes. No crime against civilians will rest unpunished. That's for certain. He said it during a visit to a military hospital. This was after the attack on Belgorod. But this quote was taken out of context to indicate that the large salvo was the retaliation. Why do you think the West does that? Why do you think the West says, actually, that was the comeback for the landing ship and for Belgorod? And do you think there will be any actual retaliation for those two attacks, or just an overall increase in the intensity as it was already part of the plan?
Yeah, it's increased intensity. It's overall plan. How much that fits into the overall military strategy and operational planning, I don't know. I cannot say this, but again, the West does narratives. They being people who are utterly incompetent militarily, including the so-called expert quote unquote community. So they have to come up with all kinds of the stories and narratives. It sells newspapers or what have you, subscriptions. So they will come up with any kind of BS, trying to convince people there's something happening there which is not happening there at all. And it's all slanted towards, describing all those, backward, Russians who, ran out of missiles and continue to run of them. They will probably continue to run of those missiles for the observable future. And that's what I'm saying. It's absolutely responsible. They have to stop basically export of the washing machines and other devices, kitchen devices, to Russia. Because as we know, Russia takes microchips from dishwashers and washing machines. And this is what the narratives of their practically all corporate media, or whatever you call it, legacy media or sewer media, is being played with in the West. And as we know, most of them are one way or another connected to either intelligence services or their political parties and other corporate interests. So they will continue to do that, creating stories out of nothing.
As usual. At the recent extensive strike, could that be also interpreted as a signal for a precursor for a broader ground offensive? There's various analysts who've suggested that there's a temporary lull in the conflict, and then Ukrainian authorities keep saying, no, we're at a stalemate, And then there's reports of Ukraine fortifying defensive lines along the northern front. And how do these observed military and strategic developments contribute to assessments about the potential for a larger scale ground offensive in the near future for Russia?
That certainly could be construed as such, as preparation of the final, basically wiping out the remnants of whatever is left of the military-industrial complex of Ukraine. So yes, you theoretically can construe it towards that. There is obviously the desire on the part of military people, for example, on the front lines, and I know this pretty much firsthand, that yeah, we want to, but will they? I don't know. Again, you have to understand that it's all happening in the broader geopolitical, so to speak, stage, if you wish. And Russia is on a classic attrition strategy here. And it's not about attriting Ukraine. It's about, attriting combined West. And whatever, until it's completely exhausted, politically, militarily, economically, in terms of especially supplying all kinds of the hardware to Ukraine, then, after Mr. Putin already went basically on record a week or so ago about Western Ukraine, it gave you overall feel what is in plans. And in plans are Kharkov and Odessa and Nikolaev. So it is going to happen, but how it is going to happen, on when, it's difficult for me to say, obviously. And my contacts also cannot say this, for sure. Nobody but Russian general staff and, top political brass know about it. That's pretty much it.
Let's talk about the counteroffensive then, because we're still talking about it in Western media. I'm not really sure. I read an article today that on the Wall Street Journal, and it said it's unclear whether Ukraine and its allies can craft an alternative approach. Ukraine has lost thousands of troops, including some of its most skilled and best motivated fighters, like the men from Harchenko's company. The counteroffensive has fizzled with an advance of only a few miles to show for it, and they even included a map. The West has already admitted that the counteroffensive has failed multiple times. What is next of this famed counteroffensive? Is it dead? I mean, that's the white part, right? In that map is what they're left with. So, what do we say about the counteroffensive?
Well, we already know that operational planning in Pentagon is on the level of amateurs. Basically, that's what we know. They got used to fight third world militaries and create the whole fuss about it. It was a complete failure of not just only basically catastrophic losses for armed forces of Ukraine. It was a catastrophic failure of the people, and it's NATO which plans this for Ukrainian military. They evidently do not understand what modern war is. And again, as I already stated, for people who go through the combined arms warfare classes based on the movie pattern, they still think that the more ground you cover, the better you are, which is absolutely not true. And Russians were expecting this counteroffensive, and as already stated, I mean, I don't think so. They read who Alexander Svechin is, one of the greatest Russian Soviet strategists. And this was a classic attrition, exhaustion strategy. And we know the result. So as the result of it, I believe Mr. Shoigu stated it a week ago, that there was more than 160,000 of their casualties on the Ukrainian side, and just throughout the 2023, much of which was this so-called counteroffensive. In reality, it was offensive. 28,000 pieces of equipment have been destroyed. So that was their strategic aim of Russian defense. They call it strategic defense. Strategic defense doesn't necessarily mean that you do not conduct offensive operations. You do, and that's what Russia is doing right now, moving their front line to the west. So, and when you look at this, I mean, normal people wouldn't do that, what they did in terms of counteroffensive. And when you read attentively what kind of operational aims they were putting together, like, just cutting through Russian defenses, go to Melitopol. And you had people who believed that. They really, operationally, planned that in primarily Pentagon and London. What can I say? I mean, the remnants of reputation of the NATO military people are just gone. It's completely evaporated. Nobody with serious military background will look at it and not scratch their head, because this was bound to happen. You could see it miles away. But evidently, as already stated, pattern movie is not good, reference point when you do this. So they basically killed. This year, Shoigu was on record a few days ago, more than 235,000. So there you go. So
I'm not sure that the United States or NATO uses Patton as a planning. I think it's more like Saving Private Ryan. Like,
no, I think so many do actually, because but yes, that also the part of it. So, and as I already stated, a Russian side, and especially Russian professional military planners, they had their jaw dropped on the floor just observing this. It was like absolute insanity. We didn't have anything like this since, I don't know, World War I. And there you go.
It was like a few of the videos was like Vietnam. Like, it was astounding what was happening on that bridgehead, trying to cross the Dnieper over and over and over. And I don't know how anybody can watch that and say exactly that. Where was the planning? And they just kind of keep calling them heroes over and over. Oh, they're heroes, and they're just all sort of dying. And I believe that they just ordered another 150,000 female uniforms.
Yeah, and again about Krinky bridge, so-called bridgehead, it's a swampy place, and the reason they continue to throw people there now is absolutely obvious. It's absolutely openly is discussed among professionals and even among journalists in Russia. The picture there in Krinky is that of the horror movies. You literally have each square meter covered with either body parts or bodies. It is now also the sanitary issue because those bodies are granted that it's winter right now and they decompose slower than usually. So they understand that once Russians will move to clean up, the whole thing, uh, the pictures which will come out of there, they will be absolutely terrifying. And this is happening pretty much along the most of the front line, and people already complaining because those bodies, they do not take them from the battlefield, they do not evacuate them. And currently it will be basically about 2 by 1 kilometer, so about 2 kilometers, square kilometers horror, something like of the Battle of Borodino, in 1812 between Russians and French, where they slaughtered each other in some horrifying numbers. So there you go. So that they will continue to send those guys there. And yes, women are being drafted. And at this stage, there are many, many firsthand accounts of, for example, frontline storm units encountering women all the time. So, and what can I say? That's their mobilization.
Well, yeah, and I think that we're starting to see kind of a wave of these unpaid and disgruntled mercenaries now floating their way into Israel and kind of finding a side to fight on down there. Most of them winding up in the IDF, Foreign Legion sort of hodgepodge they've created. So they're even losing people that are just kind of abandoning the whole thing, the ideology. And interesting that they slide over to Israel, but that's neither here nor there. You did mention NATO, and Zelensky is on his first Baltics beggar tour of 2024. The first of, I'm sure, many. So he started off in Lithuania. He said they discussed the integration of Ukraine into NATO and in the EU. Which, how does Lithuania have any say? But cooperation on the electronic warfare and drones, which I'm not sure that I know of Lithuania having a strong drone program, and the need for more air defense systems. He said this is why we should fight this enemy with technology until we have driven them out of our land and the war is over. Then he hopped on over to Estonia and told them that thank you for your air defense systems. I can't even read this. They intercepted 12 planes and 26 helicopters in one day.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? I don't even know how to ask a question after just like regurgitating that.
Yeah, it's beyond ridiculous now. And of course, probably in Russia, Estonian is their basically euphemism. Being Estonian, a euphemism for being very slow, so it's and nothing wrong with Estonians per se, no, I mean, but the point is that what is Estonian air defense? Those Baltic states promised to just stop Russian combat ships of the Baltic fleet, and stop other ships and basically close their Gulf of Finland. It's like, with what? With rowing boats and with their, minesweepers from NATO, which are 50 years old and have 20 millimeter, machine gun. I mean, it's preposterous. But Zelensky needs to do his moves. Practically, the whole idea of him was that's what he was doing. And they bought it, swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker with propaganda in Washington and in London. And he caught, you have to understand, people like Zelensky, they are much smarter than people in Washington, in the sense that they have this understanding of this emotional thing, of which your button you can press constantly. So you have to go to Washington, to Capitolian, and stop basically to being a sycophant. You have to sing all those BS, like how great you are, how great United States Army is, how great those complexes and all this is. And he does what he's sucking up constantly. But even that can go only for so long, that even those morons on the, in the Capitol Hill, they begin to understand that, oh my God, I mean, we have been led, by the nose. And so when you look at this, the only thing what is left for him now, against the background of the United States suddenly beginning to recognize what they got themselves into, is to start, going around and trying to present himself as some kind of statesman. And his level now have been reduced to these Baltic statelets. They are not real states. They are, and what you see is him doing the circles. He does the rounds because he needs to. And we don't know if he understands that he might be at some point of time removed forcefully. So, and we don't know, what is it? SAS guards him, I believe. It's not even Ukrainian. I believe it's British. And British are really good at killing, Skripal cats and, defenseless people. So at some point of time, they might really kind of...
I mean, they almost killed Stepan Bandera before, and the KGB did their job for them. But,
yeah.
I mean, maybe he'll go the way of that. Is that what you're kind of thinking? You mentioned him being removed by force. What do you think about the political turmoil inside of Ukraine with Zaluzhny and I think Gerashenko was talking again, Yulia's talking again. Like, what's happening? Are we going to have a presidential election? Or are we going to, who the hell knows?
Yeah, nobody knows. Yeah, it's literally as the pool of excrement which they obtained recently. And Kiev metro is actually being flooded. It is complete collapse of the state, basically control. And again, the only reason this present Ukrainian state exists is strictly because of the financial aid from the West, primarily from the United States. But then, of course, we have Germany, which is being squeezed for everything they got. So that's the only reason they exist now. Removed it. They even admit themselves, But obviously, he now came to the point where actually the West cannot continue to provide real hardware to him, because not only because they don't have it, but also because of their reputational risks. Because NATO hardware, which was as usually boasted as being the best in the world, has been completely humiliated against the real army, against the real armed forces, against the advanced military technology. That happened with Leopards. Patriot Pack 3 are laughing stock at, so, and they come up constantly with this garbage, BS that, and, when you have the jar of pickles and you can shut down, caliber missile, that is amazing. I mean, it's outstanding things, which they do there. So, and that's what we have now. And the Russians are not in rush. They really don't have any pressure of time. And let me tell you, as my friends from Russian central apparatus of Ministry of Defense, they say, the most important thing for us was that we have been untied from calendar. That means what? There are no set dates when you have to do this, that, or that. There are, of course, operational plans, which obviously time sensitive, but they do it without necessity to run into some offensive. Everything in Russia right now is about the economy of force and preserving as many civilian and own military lives. And as I already stated a few months ago, and my friend Marat Khairulin, who is attached to Slavyanka Brigade, which is becoming division now, actually, he said, you know what, at some point of time in some sectors, we had the situation that you would have the kill ratio, which is beyond, people wouldn't believe, 1 to 30, 1 to 45, to such point on some sectors, not across the whole thing. And that we said, we didn't even rotate units there, there was no necessity. They didn't have, any kind of serious losses and things of this nature.
So the situation really is as bleak as it appears from the outside looking in. From the inside looking out, the Russians are kind of like, where are they? Like, we don't even have to rotate at this point. Is that what's going on? And we have rivers of fecal matter rushing through the streets of Kiev, and then rivers of dead bodies rushing through the trenches of Ukraine. Like, I just don't know where this this feasibly ends. Like it is almost terrifying the lengths that the Ukrainian government is still willing to go. I mean, it's clear that there's been a pivot from Ukraine to Israel, and I know that Zelensky's tried multiple times to kind of salvage that or try to lump himself in with Israel as a kind of a common cause, and it's just not really working. And then we're now seeing this really weird rhetoric that the British have to step up to defend Europe, and I'm not really sure why. How did we get from Russia is collapsing, and now Britain is the first line of defense. From this article, senior figures within the unit said soldiers are working with limited resources and won't cross, these are the British soldiers, and won't cross the line at 100%, but war requires the want to fight. And Russian troops are not up for it, despite outnumbering Ukraine with tanks and artillery systems. British squaddies believe. German media claimed that NATO has expressed concern the UK will not be ready to take over command of the Very High Readiness Joint Task Force on January 1st, 2024. So Russia doesn't want to win. They have got more men, they have more troops, but they are just not up for it. But the British don't have any weapons. They don't have any equipment, but they have the want to fight.
Yeah. You know, I already mentioned about Estonians being euphemisms by being slow. And there is another very famous Russian. You go any Russian entertainment thing, or even in the mainstream media in Russia, it's called British scientist. It is euphemism for people who make research such as, for example, if you drink alcohol, you get drunk. Or if you are tired, you want to sleep. Type of their research, and it all goes under the auspices or title of the aegis of the British scientists, people who do obvious things. So here we have the British scientists in reverse, because there is nothing more preposterous and ridiculous than United Kingdom Ministry of Defense and their intelligence. I mean, as bad as America is, these guys, they do not understand. Russians look at them as the pipsqueaks. They cannot deploy single maneuverable armored brigade until 2027 now, I believe. And so remove their Rolls-Royce from Great Britain and some other small things, and it's a serious economy state, you know, with the economy of the third world. And you probably, and I have all my respect, deep respect, and sympathy to British people, to average, English guys, and so. But those people still think that they are great. They are not. You cannot prepare competent officer in 44 weeks in Sandhurst. It's not even serious, It takes years and years of serious academic and military training to turn some guy into the competent officer. They have these guys from Sandhurst 44 weeks. And guess what? They have degrees from journalism to public relations. They go in, and then suddenly in 44 weeks, you get guys who are combined arms officers. This is ridiculous. I mean, but then again, after Lisa Francheti's yesterday, Chief of Naval Operation of the U.S. Navy, after her mission statement, I can't believe anything. Really.
What was the mission statement? I didn't get.
Oh my God! This was the most pathos-ridden piece of their political statement, and you can go in and the United States Naval Institute, website and read it.
Well, ever since I left the Navy, it's really just gone right downhill.
It is.
Over the last year, I was really holding up the entire United States Navy. And speaking of navies, let's touch on. So, one of the listeners did ask: does Andrei see this as a bigger plan to tie up Russia in Ukraine so Israel can conduct a wider war in the Middle East? There was an attack on the British base in Oman this morning, and you mentioned the British Navy, and we're having issues with retention in the British Navy. And then the British base in Cyprus is also under threat at this moment. So how does this, and I don't want to get too deep into the Israel-Palestine ideology or the war, but how does this conflict influence and like things in Ukraine for Russia particularly? We know what it's doing to Ukraine. It's depleting their resources. But politically, what is it doing for Russia? I've seen it as an opportunity for Russia to really shine, and I think that they've done well in this situation. But how do you see it?
Russia obviously has interests in the Middle East, but of course, Russians are realists, and they understand that they have to deal with their people such as British and Americans. And especially with the United States being completely subservient to the American-Israeli Public Relations Committee and large evangelical Christian Zionist lobby here. So the United States will get in there. But in some sense, it was obviously, when it happened, it was one of those classic Churchillian that, never allow good crisis go to waste. And here there was, great opportunity, as they thought then, for Biden to kind of remove some focus from, catastrophe of the United States and combined West in Ukraine. But of course, it was all predicated on the fast completion, so to speak, of whatever the IDF is doing in Gaza. Now, if they want the wider war, obviously Netanyahu is obsessed with, the same as Likudniks, they are obsessed with Iran. But obviously Iran kind of, it has its own resources. And now that you also have this news that Russian and Iranian bank systems are connected directly, so there's a lot of cooperation which goes into Russian-Iranian relations. So Iran doesn't want the war. Likudniks want. But the problem for them is, today is what, 11th? It all started on the 7th of October, right? Look at this. They got mauled. Hamas is still standing. And so if they want to widen it, I don't think so they will do much better. Now that we understand that the resources are extremely limited in the United States. And the whole special military operation, actually what it did, it exposed the West as the paper tiger. Economically, not to speak of militarily. I wrote a number of books saying that they are not first-rate military. They never have been. So, but the point is that when you look at this, it's like, well, sure, they would want the wider war. What's Russia gonna gain? I don't know what the plans of Kremlin are, but there's definitely an air base, Khmeimim air base in Syria by Russia, and Tartus naval base now being upgraded to naval base. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure that Turkey is going to play a very serious game, and they are playing the serious game, whatever their intentions are. And so it's basically right now it's a complete geopolitical mess. But for Russia, it's really, how to put it, as long as Syria remains untouched, and Russians probably will be, in some sense, they are a balancing act here. So who knows, but nobody wants oil $200 a barrel, because after that it will collapse American economy completely and the state will disintegrate. So not to speak of Europe, which is in the state of complete disintegration.
They're done.
They're done. Yeah, Europe is done. It's over for them.
The United States has completed one of their ultimate goals of destruction of Europe, the European continent, via immigration and depletion of arms. They're finished. And speaking of arms, today or yesterday, an article came out again. The Pentagon can't find more than half of those weapons they sent over to Ukraine. So where are the weapons? And I keep telling our listeners, like, that wasn't an accident. Now they can go start wars with all of these new radicalized units all over the place. Like, get ready for moderate rebels in the Balkans or something like that.
Yeah. And moderate rebels already happening in France, for example. France obviously is playing with the statistics of immigrant population. We know that the south of France is practically, there are very few indigenous French people, as we know now. So it's over. I mean, Germany is done economically, and so it will. We're already beginning to see some, so to speak, signs of early disintegration and turning themselves into the third world nation. So, well, as long as they can maintain autobahns, which is not big deal, So, and that's pretty much it, and as much as it pains me to say that, they wanted it, they got it, so enjoy.
Yeah, and I keep thinking, I keep look at this, and I'm like, they really think that they're going to be able to turn the absolute debacle in Ukraine into this somehow making money again in Israel, and I'm like, it's just not really translating off that way. And I also want to know if you could give us some more insight, because what I'm seeing is not that the Russian-Israel relationship is disintegrating or deteriorating. It's just kind of weird because Israeli politicians are just weird in general, but the relationship between Iran and Russia is really like gaining economically. So I think, if it really came down to it, does Russia just kind of abstain and kind of hope for the best? Or like, what do you think where do you think that their allegiances really lie at the end of the day?
It lies with about 1 million Israeli Russian citizens.
Yeah.
That's Russia cannot say, and here's 1 million Jewish guys, and they are Russian citizens, and you cannot say, go to hell. No, they are Russian citizens. They have to have the same defense and, the defense of their human rights and things of this nature. So, of course, because of that, Russia is kind of, dealing with this issue. It doesn't mean that Russia supports Israel.
No.
Nobody supports that. That's a plain genocide there, which they commit. But obviously, Iran, in terms of the relations and in terms of the benefits, is colossally more important than Israel. Iran is one of the largest oil producers in the world. And now you already know the stream of the first Russian combat aircraft begins to, Iran is perspective pretty much decided market for Russian civil aviation. We're talking about like they should buy 40 super jets already fully Russified, and then MS-21 goes online. And so when you look at this, and of course there is a very big operation in military sphere. So Iran now is a strategic partner of Russia, and it's a part of BRICS. And there are very good relations. Obviously, they have their own, tension points and things of this nature, but primarily it's strategic cooperation and strategic partner relations. So, and don't forget, Iran is the end of this major north-south corridor.
Right.
This is so it is Russia, Azerbaijan, and Iran. And
yeah. You're going to start opening up another can of worms. You want to start talking about Armenia now? Because Armenia is getting warm again, too. I feel like these little pockets of Western/Israeli enclaves are starting to just activate. We've got weird things happening in Azerbaijan. Now they're saying they're going to annex all of Nagorno-Karabakh, and they will call it West Azerbaijan. We now have the Albanians and Kosovars kind of acting up in the Balkans. All of these sort of NATO Israeli creations around the world picking up steam while Ukraine kind of gets left in the lurch. Then we get to say we told you.
Well, this is because this is the only thing they can do. It's basically sabotage and subversion operations. They cannot fight real war. They really never could. I mean, the finest fighting force in history lost all of its wars. So it's like, what the hell, man? I mean, if I go out in the ring and get the crap beaten out of me time after time after time, do I call myself the greatest fighter in the world?
Well, I mean, they won. Wait. They won the Civil War. I mean, because they were on both sides. So they stacked the deck. So don't
not forget Grenada. Yeah, Grenada. So it's but point is, it's like, people, are you freaking? They do live in echo chamber. My fourth book is precisely about it. I'm not writing there this minutia and times table of the special military operation. I describe how the special military operation as a litmus test exposed to what degree of incompetency it is all. It just, I knew it was bad. Make no mistake, I knew it was bad. I never understood that some people in Russia, for example, military professionals, some of them are my friends, and they just in awe. It's like, oh my God. It's, so the same with me. When I understood the depth of the sheer stupidity and incompetence, it just blew my mind. How do you even approach and start to describe to this when you look at the special military operation and its effects on economic and military balance in the world? There are still some people who think that the United States is, the biggest economy in the world. China industrially, in terms of industries, dwarfs United States. I always use this example. Do you know that Russia produces as much steel as the United States? But actually, together with the whole iron, it's much larger than the United States. But China produces 12 times more steel than the United States, 3.5 times more automobiles. So, remove aerospace industry from the United States, which is still strong, although I'm not flying Boeing 737s ever again. I just rather fly Airbuses. So, but I mean, no, 777 is excellent aircraft, 747s, my love, So, but 737, so remove that. What's left? What's left? Nothing left, really. Raytheon, I mean, it's just laughing stock now of serious militaries, and it's like, there you go.
Everything's bloated and just completely out of control. And instead of like, oh, well, what's going on with the F-35 program? Like, no, reveal the new stealth bomber. And you're like, wait, what happened to the F-35? It's in the ocean. Like, what? It's astonishing. And I keep on trying to tell people that when they're looking at these other conflicts that are kind of coming up in now Israel and Gaza, possibly something in Serbia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And I'm telling people because they're, a lot of people have a weird they're just westernized for the most part, anti-Russian kind of just in the back of their mind at all times. And I'm like, the only reason any of this is possible is because of Russia. The only reason any of you have a fighting chance at all is because of Russia. If Russia didn't expose exactly what you said, there wouldn't be all these entries into BRICS. There wouldn't be an off-ramp from SWIFT. It's really incredible. And I want to keep driving that point home because Russia always gets crapped on. They're always
it's just the way it is,
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess it's just Slavs in general because they're like, yeah, I'm used to it, but it really, a huge credit is really due because this is just the entries into BRICS this year alone are just astounding. And the things, the way that the winds of change are kind of moving across the continent. What can you tell us about Russia and the Red Sea? We know that Russia has a decent relationship with Ansarallah, who's now part of the Yemeni armed forces. What is that relationship like? We know that they're letting Russian ships through, which was part of the deal anyway, that is not specific to Russia, just anything that's not helping or destined for Israel. But what's their relationship like with Ansarallah, now the Yemeni armed forces?
Well, from what I know, I'm not a specialist in the area. I know that first, Russians are kind of like, yeah, okay, we have some contacts, we have some relations, and we understand where you're coming from. But you have to understand that the landscape changes really fast right now. Don't forget, Saudi Arabia now is the member of the BRICS. So that's going to play something. And then, of course, when you look at Yemenis, well, hey, let's face it, they're also Islamic fundamentalists. They pretty much, they're basically a situational, not allied, good relations with Russia. A lot of changes on the ground there. So Russia, let's put it this way. I wrote about it in Russian segment, and it's not our war. That's what Russians understand, So because, let them deal with this. We are standing away. We try to kind of, develop some kind of peaceful solution. But it is definitely not Russia's war, And especially, we know now that there are huge air defense issues in the Bab el-Mandeb, Strait and all things of this nature. So, why Russia should interfere? Let's put it.
I agree 100%. I think that they're taking I think that they've approached this really well. I think they've handled almost all of the UNSC rulings well. I spoke to Ambassador Polyansky during all of this a couple times. I think that they've done a really great job, but I have to ask because one of our listeners is going crazy in the comments. Why did Russia abstain from why did Russia not veto the condemnation of Ansarallah in Ansarallah's attacks in the Red Sea. Why didn't Russia veto that?
I don't know. The Russians have their own reasons to do that. And then, of course, listen, again, I don't know the history of Nasrallah, and, but as I already stated, these are not nice guys. I mean, nothing wrong with that, But again, it's like when this tragedy unfolded on the October 7th, I wrote immediately. So, guys, there are no good people on both sides. Let's start with this. Now, obviously, Hamas, through their PR campaign and obviously the colossal crimes which Israel commits there against civilian population, they did earn sympathy. But again, remember, while we can go on forever, as I already stated, that, Israel stole basically parts of Palestine and all that, So, but the point is, those are not nice people, okay? The fact that they have some political manifestations of their political inclinations, for example, like Yemenis, if it's Russian ship, let it go through. It's all fine and dandy, but we have to look at a larger picture. And so when Russia, especially on the level of the United Nations, doesn't do this or that, I am not Mr. Lavrov, who has the highest clearance in Russian Federation to the intelligence and diplomatic, information. Okay, so he is the permanent member of the Security Council of Russia, and it is there where the strategy is developed and where basically guidelines are given to how vote or not vote, to do what and how to do it. These are extremely classified, well defended, by all kinds of technical meetings. So, and we can only speculate. So if Russia didn't vote for this, I think so Russia had its own reasons for that. And me speculating, I'm not the guy who sits and speculates, it's just the way it is.
No Russians sit and speculate. You can never get a Russian to speculate, especially Russian men. But okay, so speaking of Russian men, back to Putin. Before the new year, he gave this really great speech about what he kind of, Putin likes to do, the between the lines kind of thing. So I think Area has it synced up, and they mentioned it in the comments. I guess you guys are mind readers. What happens to the borderlands after the end of the Ukrainian conflict? I think he alluded to giving some stuff away. Area, do you have that keyed up?
Единственным гарантом, тоже где-то уже я говорил об этом, у меня это проскакивало, единственным гарантом суверенитета и территориальной целостности Украины была Россия. Россия, когда создавала Советский Союз, передала просто так, вместе с населением, огромные исторические территории российские, огромный потенциал, и вкладывала колоссальные ресурсы во всю эту территорию. И западные земли Украины, мы же знаем все, как Украина получила это. Сталин отдал после Второй мировой войны. Отдал часть польских земель, Львов и так далее. Сколько там?
So he's talking about the lands for I think he agreed for Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary, and maybe even Poland to come in and take their bits and pieces back. What do you think about that? I'm all for it, but I don't know, like when Putin talks like this, sometimes it's kind of a poking the bee's nest a little bit. But what do you think about his intentions, or is there any sort of thoughts for those border regions, or Transnistria or Bessarabia?
No. I hear where you're coming from. Yes, no, he is very straightforward, and he was on record in his other, I lost count and where, it was recently, okay, because it's just the stream of information. So he spoke openly on record. We will not give up what is ours, but, and here it is, Western Ukraine is going to be partitioned, period. It's not going to exist as Ukraine. If Poles would have been more perceptive and less jerks, as they are today. They would have gotten this probably, earlier in a much less, bellicose manner. But it was understood from the get-go. They will get their Kresy. They call it Kresy. Their eastern lands, and they will get them. So Lvov and number of those places are going to Poland. We have obviously the Carpathian Hungarian enclave, if you wish, or exclave, if you wish. So, and Bukovina is Romanian land. So that's pretty much goes. The rest of it, we know that Kharkov, Odessa, and Nikolaev are obviously there. Once we talk about Odessa, we immediately talk about the land bridge to Transnistria.
Yep.
So that's pretty much done deal. We know it's going to happen. What's going to happen after that with whatever will be left, that's where he stated, but we will not give up ours. And what give up ours? There are a bunch of Chernigov, Sumy, other areas which were traditionally Russian, but there are very few pro-Russian people there. So Russia doesn't want to get those, I think, at this stage on its own balance, because Russia's still sorting out the new 4 oblasts, including Donetsk and Lugansk, which are de facto have been part of Russia for the last 8 years.
Right.
More than that. And when you look at this, there are still a lot of problems. There is still a lot of endemic Ukrainian corruption. There's still, but yes, they are developing them. So once you get Odessa, Nikolaev, my gosh, you have to also basically digest very large lands. With the Odessa alone, it's a large city. It's more than 1 million population. And you look at Nikolaev, it used to be the center of the Soviet shipbuilding. It built aircraft carriers, okay? Now it is turned into some kind of the moon landscape. It is just absolutely destroyed economically and what have you. So you have this whole thing which you have to think about, let alone Kharkov, gigantic city, which used to have enormous scientific and industrial base. But there you are. And so it's not like it's gonna happen immediately like that. Russia is not gonna jump and attach those territories, much of population of which is pretty much hostile, So it's gonna take some time. So we know that the Odessa Nikolaev is definitely in nearest plans. After that, how it will proceed administratively, politically and economically. So will they send Ramzan Kadyrov to run as which might happen actually. They need to run those. Those are just absolutely lawless cities now.
Yeah.
What is happening there is just absolute. So you have the guy, the guy like Ramzan Kadyrov going in and with his iron fist, just basically putting things slightly in shape, then you allow people that are the elites. So it's a whole huge process. It's not easy. So, and of course, Russia has to do it without, diminishing or any deterioration in economic standard of living in Russia. Russians got used to live really well. So, but then again, special military operations showed the huge depth of Russian economy and ability to sustain pretty much anything, so there you go. Yeah.
I really think that the SMO made Russia so much stronger, and it's kind of incredible. It kind of showed, I think Iran had already kind of done it as well. She kind of showed that there's a real capability to be self-sufficient here, and now it's inspiring other people to do the same. And so, since you touched on it, where do you think 2024 leaves us with Russia? I'm not seeing the SMO to its completion, obviously, in 2024. Like you said, there's so many loose ends to tie up, so many cities, large cities to get through. But what do you see in 2024? Spring and summer, maybe? Not speculating. We're not speculating.
Well, what is for sure, I think we are at the end of the complete destruction of the military, industrial, and mobilizational potential of Ukraine. And as I already stated, Russians kind of, said, what, if they want it, hell with it. There is no much talk about these brotherly people anymore. It's kind of this rhetoric just faded away in 2023. So, and as horrible as it sounds, but the meat grinder will continue, until there's nothing left, and after that, then it's probably we're going to see, the entrance into those cities, and they will basically surrender, not gonna, how to put it, they will not try to defend them. So this is what is this all about. You don't have to waste, lives of Russian soldiers just because you want to, show some kind, of the achievement. It's for Ukraine and NATO to do. That's how they operate, on PR-driven, operational art, so to speak, So, and that's for sure is going to happen. I think so. It's the last year of Zelensky, though. I don't think so he can continue like this anymore. He's probably going to be removed or will run away. But again, for the guy who has so much blood of his compatriots on his hands, there will be many people in Ukraine. Will be there. I'm sure there are very many people in Ukraine who would love to settle scores with him, completely on their own volition, completely without any intelligence services or whatever telling them to do that. And what can I say? So, but Ukraine, as we knew it, is over. So we just basically look at the carcass of the state, which is shaky, and it's just a matter when it completely collapses. 2024 looks like to be that
or Zelensky has an overdose, whichever comes first.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've come to the top of our hour. Excuse the dog sounds. Everybody in the comments says, "Oh my God, what are those noises?" It's clearly an animal. It's not me, guys. It's the dog. See, dog. But anyway, Andrei, why don't you tell everybody what you're up to, where they can find you?
So, standard procedure, smoothiex12blogspot.com. It's and my channel at smoothiex12. Yeah, I know smoothiex12, but yeah, it became kind of like so YouTube. That's pretty much. I always tell people that I don't do porn or fans only. So it has nothing to do with anything because they won't allow me to do this anyway because it will break the internet, So
it will absolutely break the internet.
No, they will go bankrupt after that. But the point is that it just that's it, pretty much. And my blog, everybody knows my blog, So and just
please don't go to Andrei's blog expecting porn.
Yeah. People say, when I give them my email, like, what the hell? I said, no, this is not what you think it is. I don't know. I mean, I know I can make not so much money as be sued. After that, there will be lawsuits if I try that, so for discrediting the industry, so, and, so that's just, so I have only two sources. I know there are some Rumble thing which is happening, but I have issues even uploading things there for some reason, technical issues, not, so other than that, that's pretty much two media which I run.
Well, thank you so much, Andrei. It's been a riot again, like last time. We will see you tomorrow for our space with Norman Finkelstein about the ICJ. Thanks.
Not me.
You can too if you want.
No, I'm good. Okay, Sarah, thank you for having me.
Andrei, go ahead, Harry, and take us out.
Что там? Выборы сегодня. Сегодня? Ну да. Ну хорошо. Слышь, а ты в резервистах случайно не снимался? Не, похож просто. Реально похож. Ты за кого проголосовал?
Вообще-то у нас в стране тайное голосование.
Ну да. С Богом, мужики. А ты за кого голосовал?
Ну, в стране один президент. И он сказал, Одесса – русский город. А я из Одессы.
Всем постам, всему личному составу, боевая тревога, выдвигаемся, брать укрепрайон.
Принял. Выдвигаемся.